Good afternoon. Today we will be studying another discipline in the social sciences, and that is history. To begin with, let us first define what is history. Now, history is usually defined as the systematic study of the human past by reading accounts from old documents and analyzing unwritten sources such as cultural artifacts or photo recordings of oral accounts. Now, if we look at the history of the word history, it came from the Greek word historia, which means finding out, or a form of inquiry, or even a narrative. Now, in some interpretations, historia means the knowledge acquired by investigation. Now, the American Historical Association defines history as the never-ending process whereby people seek to understand the past and its meaning. Therefore, history, in many ways, is a way for us to understand ourselves and actually make sense of the world. Now, history is not only the memorization of events and dates, but also the problematization of the nature of the human past, the nature and the legitimacy of historical sources. It includes also the interpretations of written and unwritten texts, or the hermeneutics, and the politics of writing history, or how a historian's personal or institutional bias may change how the past is represented. Now, how do we find out uh, and where do where do we base history, and what are our sources in writing and knowing our history? Now, there are two sources, or two major categories. One is the primary source, and the second is the secondary source. Now, the primary sources are documents written by eyewitnesses, or documents written and published during a certain period. Now, objects and photographs made and taken during a specific period can also be considered a primary source. However, on the other hand, the secondary source is an interpretation of a primary source. So, for example, if the primary source is Noli Me Tangere, if we want to study Rizal, then the secondary source would be a commentary or interpretation of the works of Rizal. Now, history books are now already considered as secondary sources because they are interpretations of primary sources. The question is, and how do we verify sources? Now, this is actually one of the most evident problems that we face in the Philippines. There are a lot of posts and information that are actually being spread by some people and organizations with actually questionable sources. And this is a problem of what they call the historical revisionism. They're trying to change history by providing us alternative facts as to what they describe it. How do we actually verify if the sources are authentic and worthy of consideration? And historian verifies sources through external and internal criticism. Now, the external criticism, it looks into the physical characteristic of the source to determine whether it really existed during the period of the study. And the internal criticism reviews if the accounts are accurately aligned with the alleged time of the document. Anachronisms or terms or words or objects or terms that shouldn't have existed in a certain time are big giveaways that a certain document is fake. For example, there are a lot of Facebook posts and information or articles that are being proliferated right now, and there are terms that are questionable, because if we are to study these terms, anachronisms, or even objects, they're not yet existing during that time. And historians would right away say that, okay, these clues and these hints actually gateways for us to say that, okay, this document or this perhaps account is fake. It is not worthy of historical consideration. Now, history, these are some of the subdisciplines that we can find in history: political history, cultural history, social history, and economic history.
Welcome to the MCAT Multimedia Series and to MCAT's Introduction to History. History is the study of the past. It takes many forms, looking not only at particular people and critical periods, but also at great changes over thousands of years. It looks at the past from above, studying the development of states and the practice of power, and from below, seeking to recover the lives and times of those who went unrecorded in their day. Historians study continuity and change in economics and culture, gender and ethnicity, ideas, society, religion, the environment, and science. They borrow concepts and techniques from other disciplines: archaeology, sociology, anthropology. In every case, however, what they do is produce knowledge about the past. And that knowledge, in turn, helps us to understand our present. If you ever wondered why it's worth knowing history, consider how difficult it would be to take a decision about anything without knowing what happened yesterday, or how poor our knowledge of the world would be if history was policed by the state and rewritten to order as it was by Big Brother in 1984. History has been written since the days of ancient Greece. Herodotus, in his histories, and Thucydides, who wrote the history of the Peloponnesian War, took trouble to gather evidence, tried to work out what was reliable and what was not, and were fascinated by cause and effect. A few hundred years later, in China, the grand historian Sima Qian wrote history that was not paid for by the state, and included accounts of everyday people as well as rulers and their generals. Caught up in the politics of the imperial court, Sima Qian also made a decision that speaks to the importance of his studies. Offered the choice between an honorable death or castration, he chose to be castrated but write history. Yet while history can claim to be among the most significant of academic disciplines, it has never developed the same core of theoretical texts, models, and required courses that other subjects have. That's because historians are endlessly confronted by complexity. They have to recognize how many different factors combine to cause events, and how unique those combinations are. This also means that history is often open to a variety of interpretations. The MCAT library includes examples of very different interpretations of the same events. Daniel Goldhagen's Hitler's Willing Executioners and Christopher Browning's Ordinary Men come to completely different conclusions about the causes of the Holocaust. Lucien Febvre, in The Problem of Unbelief in the 16th Century, rewrote the history of Reformation-era France. inventing a toolkit of new ideas to get into the heads, the interior space, of those alive at the time. And Sir Richard Evans's In Defense of History assesses the problem at the root of all historical inquiry. How objective is our study of the past? Taken together, these analyses challenge you to test your own powers of deduction and reach your own conclusions. Elsewhere, you'll read analyses of other groundbreaking works that did more than simply tell the story of a time and place. They changed the way that all of us think. Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions introduced us to the idea of a paradigm. Joan Scott's Gender and Politics of History suggests that sex is determined as much by language and society as by biology. And Frederick Jackson Turner's 1893 essay, The Significance of the Frontier in American History, in defining a process that helped shape American character, changed not only our understanding of America's past, but also how the country itself saw its future. McCat helps you to understand not only history, but its historians, and not only the past, but the present. Come inside to find out more. McCat. Learn better, think smarter, aim higher.
Now I would like to pose this question. So far, is everything clear? If you have questions, kindly write them on your lecture notes and we will be addressing these questions during our synchronous meetings. Now, these are the required readings if you want to have a simple grasp of what history is. Now, kindly reflect on this, on the ongoing debates in Philippine history, is that of the interpretation on the rightful national hero. Some would say it's Andres Bonifacio, and some would say it's Jose Rizal. The Bonifacio followers are saying that Bonifacio is the rightful national hero because of his contributions in the Katipunan, while Rizal's followers would say that it is Rizal because he deserves the recognition due recognitions in instigating the Philippine Revolution in 1896. So come to think of this, I would want you to reflect on that and to ponder on in your own analysis and study of Philippine history. Who do you think is the rightful heir to the term national hero? Now, to end this, we say that history is one discipline whose actually method and approach is highly used by practitioners in the social sciences. Not only in the social sciences, but also in the natural sciences and humanities. Now, in the earlier times, the value of history was centered in its system of organizing data relating to significant events. Today, the value of history lies in its ability to provide context in the trajectory of events and shifts in personalities. So this ends our session in history, and kindly drop your questions in the comment section and I will try to address them as soon as possible. Thank you.